Hi everyone, this is Alex Suh. Today I'm recording my continuation of the Flask Lecture from last time. I only got through one iteration out of 5, but since you guys are going to be working on the competition today, I wanted to give you a bit more information that you could potentially use. So, unlike when I would be doing it live, I am not going to stop to show code and stuff, because if you need, you can always pause. You can do it any speed you want, I don't really care, but if you go too fast, you're probably not going to remember, so just be wary of that. So as a refresher, last time we did our first iteration of clubs, where we created app.py that just had two routes, an index route and a register route, and we created 4 templates. A base template that we called layout, an index template which just holds our form, and success and failure based on if we actually submit the 2 elements of the form we're looking for. Okay, so if we go into terminal just to check, I'm gonna cd and remember, sorry, we had our venv up here, so we have to venv scripts activate, and now we're inside of our venv. We can cd into club 0, set flask app equals app.py. Let me make sure. Yeah, it's called app.py, whatever you call it. Windows uses the set command, and you're going to flask run. It's going to run your server, and when you go to localhost 5000, just like always, it's going to be there. If we don't put anything, failure. If we put in our name and county, it's going to say you're registered, but it's not really doing anything with that information. Okay, now let's actually do something with that information. I'm going to copy over everything. One moment. So we're going to take club 0, sorry, and we're going to copy it, and we're going to call this clubs 1. So we're just taking the folder we had that contained all of our stuff from earlier, and we're copying it. So this is an identical copy. Now what we're going to do is we're going to edit this app.py, which looks identical. Now what we want to do is include the redirect function from the Flask package, and we'll show you what that does shortly. Then we want to create a Python list of registrants, and if you don't remember, this is just a comment. So we're going to call it students, and it's going to be an empty Python list. When we go to the index route, we just want to render the form. That's going to be the same. We're going to change this register function now. We're actually going to store the name and county variables so that we can use them later. So we're going to say the name equals request.form, and remember we have to import request.get. So when you request a web page, so when you visit index.html and you click submit, it's going to send a post request to /register. And from that requests form, which is request.form, we want to get the name. And so if we go back to templates, index, you'll see we have an input whose name is name. So that's why we use name here. Then we're going to say county equals the same thing, request.form.getCounty. And we're going to check again that these values are not none. If you don't put anything in, it's going to set them to none. And if not none, then that's going to be true, because not none is true. If either of those are none, or the user didn't put anything, we want to say it was a failure. So we're just going to render our failure template. Now what we want to do is, if it was a success and they gave both a name and a county, we want to append a new string to this list. And we're going to use an F string because we're using Python 3 and we're bougie. And what this means is this F string is going to replace these variables of the brackets with the variables we have here, the name and the county. So this is specific to Python 3, I believe. Yeah, I think so. In the past, you've used percent signs. So this is just a nice way of replacing variables and strings. Then we're going to redirect the user to /registrants. So now we're not going to just return a failure.html form. We actually want to redirect them to some page that lists the registrants. And redirect just means that you're not going to render any template. You're just going to be going to another route that we're going to define called /registrants. So let me do that quickly. We're going to add app.route. If I can type /registrants, and so that's where this comes from. We're going to define a function called registrants, and we're going to return render template registrants.html, and the students function is going to be students, or not function, variable. We're going to have a variable in our template called students, and we want that to be equal to the students variable we have. If it confuses you, you can use two different variables. The one on the right is going to be this, the name of your list, because you're equating this to this. So this is a keyword parameter. And this on the left is going to be whatever you name your variable in the template. Let me check really quickly that I'm actually recording. Yeah, okay. So you can probably guess our layout, our failure, and our index aren't going to change, but we don't have a success.html anymore. Remember, we're returning registrants.html. So I'm going to create a new text document, HTML. Yes, I do want to change it. And we're going to edit it with Notepad++. So, just like our index, it's going to extend layout.html, and it's going to copy this block body. So if we go back to our layout.html, we have this block body, which is what you replace the body with. The body of the HTML document, that is. And we want to end that block, just like in index. And we're going to create an unordered list. So if you don't remember, just a bulleted list. And now we're going to have this new special syntax. So this is where the Jinja programming language comes into play. I'll explain this in a moment. For now, just try and figure out maybe what it does. Okay, so if you remember, we had in app.py this variable called students. It's a Python list. I'm just going to pass it into registrants.html. And we're creating what looks like a for loop. And just like in Python, we're doing a for each or for in, whatever you want to call it, for student in students. So what it's going to do is for every variable in the list students, it's going to temporarily create this student singular variable, and it's going to create a list item element with this student variable as its contents. So if you remember earlier, we formatted it as a string, so we don't have to worry about any weird stuff. And we have to end the for block, just like with end block. There are languages that have to end the for. This doesn't have indentation, it doesn't have semicolons, it doesn't have closing brackets. This essentially acts as its closing bracket. So look at this and try to understand it. For every element in students, we're going to create the student variable, and we're going to create a list item with that as its contents. Okay, now let's see what happens. Everything's saved. I go back to terminal. I shouldn't have closed it earlier. I don't know why I did. And we have to activate our VN thingy, and there it is right there. We cd into clubs1. We set Flask app equals app.py, and we Flask run. Oops, Flask run. We have a small error here. Oh, I think I know. That's odd. Okay, let me try to... Sometimes Notepad++ can be weird, so I'm not surprised here. Yep, okay, so if stuff like that happens to you, I don't know why, but when you indent in Python and Notepad++, sometimes it puts spaces instead of tabs, which is really odd, but anyways, not important. Our server is running now. Or at least it's supposed to be. 127. Oh, okay, it was just being slow, I guess. I don't know why all these weird things are happening. I tested all of this beforehand. So when we register, now it adds our name. Okay, cool. Does it actually say that information? Anu from, let's say, Falls Church City. Now it adds both of our names. Awesome. Okay, so now we can add as many people as we want. See? Now we can continue adding to this amazing list, and we're actually accepting user data and outputting it. Wow, backend frameworks at their best. But what do you think happens when we shut down the server and run it again? Let's go to registrants, not my Google Drive. It was cached there for a moment. See how it's blank? It didn't save all of those things. And let's go back to indexed and put random characters. All of the others from before were gone. Why, you may ask? Let's go back to app.py. When we close the server by spamming Control-C, this students list is going to be removed. The program isn't using it anymore, so why save it in the hard drive? It was living in the RAM, and now it was gone. Now it's gone. So as soon as you have to shut down or restart your server, all of your data is lost. And you can see why that'd be very, very bad. Very, very bad. So we move on and we continue to try and fix that problem. But before we do that, let's just try and send an email for fun. Take a short break. So in our index.html, actually, I'm going to create a new folder. We're going to copy our clubs1 folder, and we're going to create clubs2. Clubs2. And now let's go into our index.html. That's now in clubs2, and we're going to add a new input. That's an email. Input name equals email, and remember this name is how we're going to refer to it later using form.request or request.form. The placeholder is going to be email, and hopefully you recognize all of the syntax. So this is the only change we're going to make to index.html. Layout and failure are once again not going to change. We're going to remove registrants this time though, and get our old success.html. So we're just going to copy that over from clubs0 into clubs2. And now we're just going to say really, and you'll see why in a second. Now we have to edit our app.py in clubs2. So we're going to import some new stuff. We're going to import OS and smtplib, and you'll see what these do in a second. These are both Python packages. We don't need redirect anymore. And we don't need registrants anymore. But our register route is going to be a lot more complicated. So we don't need registrants. So our index is going to be the same. We're just going to show the form. Now when we register, we want name. We also want your email. And now we want to make sure that all three of these things are provided. And we're going to get rid of the students that append and redirect because we're not doing that anymore. And we're going to create a message that we can send to someone. And now we're going to be using the standard mail transfer protocol library, or SMTP lib, to send an email. So we have to create a server variable that assigns the server that we're using. In this case, we're just going to use Gmail servers, and a port. We're going to start TLS. Don't worry about many of these things. You would often be using an external library or framework that makes it easier to send emails. But this is just the way you would send an email by itself. We're going to log in. If I can spell, we're going to log in to our server using our email. So this is my email that I made when I was probably 8. Cool Cat Vass. Yes, very cool, very bougie, I know. And we're going to get an environment variable from the OS package or module called password, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Then we're going to send mail from our email address using our email to their email, which is what they provided in their form, with the message, "You are registered." Then we are going to return a render of success.html, which just says that you're registered. Anyways, so how do we set an environment variable? Easy enough. Open File Explorer, Properties, Advanced System Settings, Environment Variables, and under System Variables, you're going to create a new variable with the variable name password, and the value is going to be whatever your password is. Now, as you see here, I didn't realize my password would be in the upper half of the list. That is not my password. I just changed it, which is why I'm re-recording. But if you do this correctly, once you go to myaccount.google.com, and you can see I already visited this recently, you're going to scroll, you're going to go to security, and I'm setting my environment variable on the other screen right now, so you can't see it with my password. Okay. If you scroll down to less secure app access, you're going to turn on access temporarily. Please turn this off afterwards. Right afterwards, because it's very bad. Disable immediately afterwards. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cd clubs2, cd clubs plural 2, Flask run. Now if we go to localhost 5000, register with, I'll use my other email, test county LCPS. I get an internal server error because I misspelled SMTP. Okay, sorry about that. I'm just having fun today. Well, this is what it looks like when you mess up, so lesson learned. Flask run. Okay, if we go to localhost 5000 again, and we set our county to LCPS, it's going to say you're registered. Okay, let me go to my Outlook, sign in. Yay, I got this email from myself saying you're registered. So now you can send an email. Good job. Yay. Okay, and now we're going to actually solve the problem from earlier. So, I'm going to, once again, go to our folder, wherever it is, Flask Lecture 2. I'm going to copy and paste this, and we're going to rename it to Clubs 3. Getting there, 4th iteration out of 5. So failure, index, layout, success, do not change besides one small thing in index. As usual, layout, failure are just what they always are. And what we're going to do is we're just going to remove this email. And I misspelled clubs. Let me fix that really quickly. Clubs plural, I don't know why I keep doing that. So in index.html, if I can find it again, just take out the email input. Okay, that's fine. Now we're going to open up app.py, and we're going to delete all of this stuff because we're just going to retype it anyways, and it's good practice so you can learn to type. We're not going to send any more emails, but we do need to import a new module, CSV. We're going to keep Flask render template and request. So all of this stays the same. When you visit this, it's just going to render the index. And when you visit register, you want to use post. And now this is where it's going to change a little bit. We're getting rid of email. So it's just name, your county, just like before. We need to check that they return both of them. Then we're going to open a new file called registrants.csv, and it can be whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to call it that because that makes the most sense. CSV is comma separated values, so it's a file type, and we're setting new line to empty so that it doesn't insert a blank line when we render it later between everything. With this open file, we're going to create a new writer. So csv.writer from the CSV module with our file. And in our writer, we're going to write row, which means in the CSV file, we're just going to insert a row. Using writer, you might recognize this if you took APCS from Java. They have something semi-similar. And we're going to provide a tuple with just the name and county. So ordered pair, whatever you want to call it. That's not what it's called in Python. But then we're going to close the file so we don't take up valuable resources keeping it open. And we're going to return render template that says success.html. So we're just going to return a success page, but now we're actually going to write into this file called registrants.csv the name and the county of the person who filled out the form, or whatever name they put, if it's a fake name or if it's a fake county, whatever. So go back, we close this, we go into clubs 3, and we Flask run. And if we go into, oh god, localhost 5000, we say test from PWCS, you are registered. I don't see anything. Okay, let's go to clubs 3. Wow, what is this? Microsoft Excel CSV, Microsoft Excel comma separated values file. Okay, let's open it. Wow, look at that, so cool. And if we close it, and if we go back, and we add something else, I did the wrong port, bleh, and FCPS, and then we'll say a new snack, Falls Church City, and we register. Now let's open registrants.csv again. Wow, look at that, so cool. We have a comma separated values file, and look what happens. If we shut down our server, we run it again, and we add something new, C-drama, abandon. Don't worry, it's an inside joke, haha. And we register, and we go to registrants.csv. Hey, look, the new one added, but the old 3 stayed. Wow. And if we shut down my computer, it would still be there because it's a file on the hard drive, on the file system, not just stored randomly in RAM as a list. So now, the grand finale. Let's bring everything together. So I'm going to copy this, I forgot to put, no, okay, oh well, it's fine. Clubs 4. So everything stays the same, except we're going to delete registrants.csv. And we're going to get rid of success, and we're going to bring back registrants.html, but we might as well start over because it's going to be somewhat different. Registrants.html. Yes, registrants. Now we're going to do what we did earlier. Extends layout.html, that's just standard, as well as block body. Just, you know, your typical stuff. And inside, we're, again, going to create an unordered list for student in students. And we're going to end for, and this is where it's going to be a little bit different. So this is the same thing, we're just going to pass in a student's variable. What we're going to do is we're going to create a list element, and we're going to say student, if I add a space, 0, from student 1. What does this suggest to you? Well, we're storing stuff in the CSV as tuples. So if we retrieve it from the CSV, we would expect it to be also a tuple. So if our students thing is a list of tuples, then maybe this is going to be a tuple itself. And we can get the first element using 0 and the second element using 1 because it's 0 index. So this is just, you know, standard data structure retrieval notation. Python lists, Python tuples, doesn't matter. We're just going to use these brackets. Now we're going to edit our app.py so that we can actually get the information from the CSV. So we need to import redirect again because we're going to be redirecting to registrants.html. And now after we close the file, instead of rendering success.html, we're going to redirect them to /registrants. And now we need a route for /registrants. Registrants, we don't need a method /registrants, and we're going to define a function called registrants, surprise, surprise. Now we're going to open the file that we created on the hard drive, except now instead of writing it for appending, which is what the A is for, we're going to open it to read. Then we're going to create a reader just like writer. It's, again, no surprise there, going to be very similar syntactically to what we did earlier. We're going to create a students list just like before, but remember now, this is not how we're storing our information. This is temporary, just so that we can get the information we need and give it to our templates to render. So we're going to use this for each loop for every row, and that means for every row in the CSV file from this reader, which is just a CSV reader that takes in this file. Again, somewhat similar to Java, I believe. We're going to append to the students variable the row. So the row is going to be a tuple. The reader is going to go through the CSV and get everything you need to. And now we're going to return render template, where the template is registrants.html and the students variable in index, wherever it is, I can't find it, is going to be the students list we have here. And again, this one on the right, if we call this, I don't know, children, then this would be children and it's going to work the same. So let's try it out. As long as I didn't do anything too stupid. CD clubs 4, Flask run. Okay, that's a good sign. Okay, let's look at registrants.csv right now. Doesn't exist. Okay, a new county, PWCS. Okay, I messed up. Oh, yeah, sorry. We call the list children, but I didn't change it here. We need to append to the children list. Okay, attempt 2. As long as I don't keep opening my Google Drive for some reason. I also need to Restart the server. Test LCPS. Okay, that's better. Oh, it actually wrote it. That's funny. It wrote it earlier, but then if you notice, the server encountered an error when I came to this row, so it actually had already written to the file. So now we can add people. A new snack again. Wow, look, it's 3 people. But now, let's look at what happens when we end the server and we load registrants again. Because we're using a CSV, it all stayed. And let's go manually edit the CSV now. Alex, cat. This is illegal. You shouldn't be allowed to do this, but I am because I feel like it. Alex from cat. Yay. Okay. So, you've seen all the wonderful things you can do, and with this much and the Flask documentation, if you want to do more, you can begin to make your own simple Flask sites. Save things to CSVs if you want to. It's not great, but we'll be going over SQL in the future. And we won't penalize you or anything for saving to a CSV. We're going to assume that you're not going to do anything weird with the data, so you can be very simplistic for the competition. But look at all the wonderful things you could do now. You can get information from forms, save it, output it, and now you can do whatever you want. How could you use this with user accounts? Good question. We'll talk about that with SQL and sessions. Don't worry about that for now. Don't overcomplicate your website. Just make something cool and functional. Be creative. And now, go forth and do your thing. Have fun. Bye.